stranded and alone, confronted by the merciless and relentless forces of nature, what would you do if your only remaining asset was the pure will to survive? In today's gripping tale, we explore 3 unbelievable true survival stories. These are the extraordinary accounts of Émile Leray, who cleverly escaped the deadly grip of the Sahara Desert; Juana Maria, who lived in complete solitude for nearly 20 years on a deserted island; and José Salvador Alvarenga, who drifted across the vast Pacific Ocean for over a year. Each of these individuals faced crushing loneliness, ruthless environments, and the deep psychological toll of survival. Prepare for a powerful journey that showcases the astounding power of the human spirit. Our story begins in 1993, focusing on a Frenchman named Émile Leray, a man of adventure and a highly skilled electrical engineer. Émile was known for pushing his limits and constantly seeking thrilling challenges. But nothing could have prepared him for the brutal test that lay ahead in the Moroccan Sahara. His plan seemed simple: cross the desert in a Citroën 2CV, a small car praised for its rugged design and reliability, qualities that would soon prove vital. The Sahara, however, is among the harshest places on Earth, a land of endless dunes and scorching daytime temperatures that often exceed 100 degrees. Despite the danger, Émile embarked on his journey with enthusiasm, navigating through unforgiving terrain far from any civilization. But then, disaster struck. His car hit a hidden rock buried beneath the sand, and the impact was severe. The suspension was destroyed, rendering the vehicle completely immobile. Émile now found himself stranded deep in the heart of the desert. Faced with a terrifying reality, Émile's options were dangerously few. Attempting to walk out of the desert with only a limited supply of water and food would almost certainly end in death. He needed a miracle, or a genius idea. And that's when inspiration hit. Using his engineering knowledge, he decided to turn his broken-down car into a makeshift motorcycle. It sounded crazy, but it was his only hope of escape. Thus began a grueling transformation. For 12 relentless days, Émile worked under the searing desert sun, carefully dismantling his car piece by piece. Every part was salvaged with purpose. He used the chassis as the foundation for a rough frame and repurposed the engine to drive a single wheel. With only basic tools and scraps of metal, he painstakingly built a crude motorcycle. It was far from ideal, awkward and difficult to control, but it was something. As he labored by day, Émile rationed his meager supplies to stay alive. At night, the bitter cold of the desert tested his endurance. He endured hunger, dehydration, and the ever-present threat of physical collapse. Yet, through it all, Émile remained determined. He adjusted, adapted, and improvised, never losing sight of survival. After nearly 2 weeks of excruciating effort, his handmade motorcycle was finally ready. It wasn't sleek, it wasn't comfortable, but it moved. Gathering every ounce of energy he had left, Émile climbed aboard his creation, started the engine, and made his daring attempt to escape the endless sands. Against all odds, he made it out alive, a jaw-dropping tribute to human resilience. Émile Leray's legendary escape from the Sahara Desert stands as one of the most remarkable feats of modern survival, a powerful reminder that in the darkest of circumstances, the will to live can ignite brilliant ingenuity. Juana Maria's tale, on the other hand, is one of incredible isolation, creativity, and endurance. Her story takes us back to the early 1800s, to a time when the Nicoleno people, a small Native American tribe, inhabited San Nicolas Island, a remote, windswept land roughly 60 miles off California's coast. For generations, the Nicolenos lived peacefully in this secluded environment, but their way of life was shattered by the arrival of conflict and disease, which devastated their numbers and culture. By 1835, only a few remained, and Spanish settlers initiated a relocation effort to bring them to the mainland. Among those scheduled to depart was a young Nicoleno woman. Remembered in history as Juana Maria, her fate took a tragic turn during the chaotic evacuation. Some reports claim she returned to the island in search of a missing child or family member, while others suggest she simply failed to board the final departing boat. Regardless of the reason, Juana Maria was ultimately left behind, abandoned on the barren island as the ship carrying the rest of her people disappeared over the horizon. With no communication means and no realistic hope of rescue, she found herself utterly alone. Stranded on San Nicolas Island, Juana Maria turned to the ancestral knowledge passed down to her. With no one to assist, she adapted, utilizing nature's offerings. She hunted and foraged to sustain herself, relying on the island's resources: fish, seals, roots, berries, and shellfish. She built makeshift shelters from driftwood and whale bones, crafted clothing from animal skins, and created tools from bone and stone. Every act of survival was a tribute to the wisdom of her ancestors. However, her most difficult struggle was not just with the elements. It was the crushing loneliness and silence of being the last of her kind. Over the years, Juana Maria became a legend. Occasionally, passing fishermen or traders claimed to see faint smoke trails rising from San Nicolas Island, suggesting that someone might still inhabit it. These sightings, however, were fleeting and mysterious, and no significant effort was made to locate her. She remained on the island, blending into the windswept wilderness, becoming part of the untamed world around her. The solitude that could have broken most people did not defeat Juana Maria. Instead, she found strength and purpose in her isolation. Then, in 1853, 18 years after being left behind, Captain George Nadaver and his crew arrived on the island. To their astonishment, they discovered a lone woman who had survived entirely on her own for nearly 2 decades. Juana Maria greeted them with laughter and animated gestures. Though her language was incomprehensible to them, she exuded joy and appeared in good health. Her spirit had endured. Upon her return to the mainland, efforts were made to find someone who could understand her. Sadly, it was too late. The Nicoleno tribe had either died out or been assimilated into other groups, and Juana Maria was the last fluent speaker of her language. Her words remained a mystery. As she tried to adjust to life among strangers, her immune system, unaccustomed to diseases from the outside world, proved defenseless. Within weeks, she became gravely ill and passed away. Although her return to civilization was tragically brief, her story endures. Known as the Lone Woman of San Nicolas Island, Juana Maria's life stands as a powerful emblem of resilience, strength, and the unbreakable human spirit in the face of unimaginable solitude. Our final tale of isolation takes us to the vast and unforgiving Pacific Ocean in the year 2012, where a Salvadoran fisherman named José Salvador Alvarenga began one of maritime history's most astonishing survival journeys. Alvarenga, a seasoned fisherman familiar with long periods at sea, could never have foreseen the ordeal that lay ahead. With a young companion named Ezequiel Cordoba, he set sail from Mexico's coast for what was supposed to be a routine 2-day fishing trip. But nature had other plans. Just hours into their voyage, a violent storm struck, crippling their boat, destroying the engine, and disabling the radio. Fierce winds and towering waves swept them hundreds of miles off course, and before long, the men realized they were hopelessly lost. As days turned into weeks, the gravity of their situation sank in. They drifted across the endless ocean, unable to communicate with the outside world. At first, they clung to hope, rationing their meager supplies and praying for rain. They improvised survival methods, collecting rainwater when available, and, in desperation, drinking turtle blood and even their own urine. For food, they caught fish and birds with their bare hands, eating them raw to preserve energy. But the boundless Pacific soon wore them down. The scorching sun, saltwater rashes, and mental strain turned every day into an agonizing test of will. Over time, Cordoba's health deteriorated. The harsh conditions, malnutrition, and despair gradually drained his spirit. Alvarenga did everything he could to uplift him. But after nearly 4 weeks, Cordoba succumbed to the ordeal and passed away. The loss was heart-wrenching. Alvarenga was overwhelmed with grief, guilt, and the crushing weight of solitude. He had vowed to bring Cordoba's body back to his family, but the brutal reality forced him into a harrowing choice. He had to release his friend S' body to stay alive. Truly alone, with only the vast sea and open sky for company, Alvarenga drifted endlessly. The solitude was unbearable, the silence overwhelming, and yet he managed to endure. In a desperate attempt to maintain his sanity amid the crushing isolation, José Salvador Alvarenga turned inward to his imagination. He began conversing with Cordoba, his deceased companion, inventing imaginary friends and even speaking to the boundless sea as if it could understand him. Every day was a grueling test, not just of his physical endurance, but of his mental strength. Alvarenga's body was wasting away, ravaged by extreme malnutrition. The relentless sun and continuous exposure to salty seawater caused painful sores and burns to break out across his skin. Each morning, he awoke unsure if he had the strength to face another day. But still, he clung to life. To stay alive, Alvarenga depended on what the ocean provided. With his bare hands, he caught fish, sea turtles, and seabirds, eating them raw and drinking their blood when he had no access to fresh water. Months dragged on in this torturous cycle of survival. He endured ferocious storms that nearly capsized his tiny vessel, clinging on as monstrous waves and screaming winds threatened to consume him. Scorching days and freezing nights took their toll. At times, he hallucinated, seeing distant islands on the horizon, only for them to vanish as he approached, cruel mirages tormenting his exhausted mind. Still, the ocean's powerful currents carried him ever westward, across thousands of miles with no land in sight. Days blurred into weeks, and weeks into months. Yet somehow, Alvarenga never let go of hope. He later revealed that what sustained him were vivid mental images of his favorite meals, treasured family gatherings, and his beloved hometown. In his darkest moments, those memories were his lifeline, keeping his spirit anchored to the will to survive. After a full year adrift, Alvarenga's appearance had become almost unrecognizable. He was emaciated, with matted hair and a tangled beard. His clothes had long since disintegrated, leaving him exposed to the harsh elements. Though his body was broken, his resolve remained intact. He had managed to preserve a glimmer of hope throughout the nightmare. Then, on January 30th, 2014, 438 days after embarking on what was supposed to be a simple 2-day fishing trip, he saw something extraordinary. Land. Too weak to rejoice, yet driven by sheer will, he began paddling with the last shreds of strength in his fragile limbs. When he finally stumbled ashore on one of the Marshall Islands, the ordeal that had tested every ounce of his being came to an end. He had drifted over 6,000 miles across the Pacific Ocean. The islanders who found him were shocked. He appeared skeletal, barely more than a ghost of a man. But he was alive. They gave him food, water, and urgently needed care. Within hours, news of his miraculous survival spread across the globe. The world was stunned. How could any human endure such torment? Alvarenga was taken to a hospital where his long road to recovery began. His ordeal became a worldwide sensation, an incredible account of endurance, resilience, and mental strength. Scientists and survival experts were astounded, questioning how he had survived such brutal conditions. Some even doubted his story, but his frail, scarred body bore the undeniable truth of suffering that no fabrication could mimic. To this day, José Salvador Alvarenga holds the record for the longest known survival at sea. His journey stands as one of the most powerful tributes to the indomitable human spirit. Despite the burning sun, the merciless sea, and the soul-crushing solitude, he survived, not through strength alone, but because of a fragile ember of hope that even the vast Pacific could not extinguish. These 3 remarkable tales serve as a stirring reminder that survival is not solely dependent on strength, intelligence, or skill. At its core, it is about an unwavering will to live. Émile Leray's ingenious desert escape, Juana Maria's quiet endurance in isolation, and José Salvador Alvarenga's astonishing journey across the ocean all shine a light on the limitless courage within the human soul. In the face of impossible odds and a world that showed no mercy, they endured, and in doing so, revealed the true depth of human potential.